Kathleen, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Seifert.
Here.
Commissioner White O'Neill.
Here.
Chair Dickerson.
I am here. If everyone has had a chance to look at the minutes for the May 17th meeting, if there are any discussion or changes, bring those forward. Otherwise, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Second.
from May 17th.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Public comment period. Each member of the audience may address the commission on any subject within the commission's business. Each member of the audience and each subject is limited to discussion of 3 minutes or is otherwise directed by the chair. These are for items not on the agenda. Does anyone want to discuss anything not on the agenda? No? All right. How the Warriors are doing? Anything at all? Consent calendar. We'll move on to. The consent calendar is approved with one motion. These items are read only on request of commission members. Should anyone, including members of the public, wish to discuss or disapprove any item, it must be dropped from the blanket motion and considered as a separate item. We will be pulling number 1 aside, so Ms. Hernandez can recuse herself from it, and we'll vote on that separately, and then 2, 3, and 4 we'll vote on as a consent. Are there anything else from the public or from commissioners? No?
No, Chair.
Okay. So let's do 2, 3, and 4 first. We need a motion for that.
I move that we approve the consent calendar items 2, 3, and 4.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries. Ms. Hernandez Philip, she doesn't have to go outside, does she? Okay. So we will need a motion for item number 1.
I move that we approve consent calendar item number 1.
I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And 1 abstention. Motion carries. Okay. Let us move on to item number 5. The 2811 Center Plan Development Permit at 2811 Airpark Drive. John, are we here?
I will be recusing myself as the applicant is my client. Thank you.
Sit out on that very hard.
Good evening, Planning Commission. This is a request for 2811 Airpark, and it's a plan development permit. This is plan development permit 2017-003 for NKT Commercial to construct 2 25,600 square foot 2-story office buildings on a 7-acre site in the P.D.M. zoning district. On the slide, you can see an aerial photo of the project site. This is west of Airpark Drive and south of Fairway Drive. It is the triangular portion that you see on the slide. Can move on to the next slide. This is a street view of what's existing, and currently mine body is located in the existing building. Next slide. And this is another photo of the vacant site to south of the building. This is the proposed site plan. You can see the 2 proposed buildings located to the south, adjacent to the flood control channel. These are the proposed elevations. So Mine Body would relocate into one of the new buildings, while Opio, an agricultural company, would locate their offices into the existing 36,000 square foot office building. The second office building does not have committed tenants at this time. And the proposed 2-story buildings will be prefabricated metal buildings with a clean, contemporary architectural style with emphasis of materials and colors in the entrances that face the street. The applicant is also installing curb gutter sidewalks, street lights, and street trees along the project frontage south of the existing building. So that's any portion of the project site that is not currently developed will have full public improvements. Under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, an initial study was prepared by Rincon for this project, and a mitigated neg deck was prepared and circulated for review from April 26th to May 25th. Mitigation measures have been included to adequately address any impacts, and staff recommends that the mitigated negative declaration be adopted. If we can go back to the aerial photo. The site does have a narrow drainage area that may qualify as a seasonal wetland, since wetland flora was identified in that area. To ensure that no complications occur from oversight agencies, the project is designed to preserve this area, and no construction or grading will occur within 10 feet of the area. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission by motion adopt a mitigated negative declaration, and by motion approve Plan Development Permit 2017-003. You should have also received a copy of modified conditions, and I will go through that real briefly. After the conditions were distributed, I had a conversation with the applicant, NKT, to go over some conditions and some concerns they had with some conditions. And if you take a look at the conditions of approval on page 2, number 3 speaks to whether they would be required to remove the existing landscaping that have already been installed, and to replace that with new landscaping. That condition's been removed, acknowledging that the existing landscape improvements were adequate, and that the improvements to be proposed would include the vacant areas south of what's existing. Number 4 speaks to the no-build easement. And initially, the condition was written in a manner that requires approval from the City of Santa Maria Building Division. That approval has been obtained, so the language has been modified to simply require that the no-build easement be recorded prior to final inspection of the proposed construction. On page 3, conditions 7 and 8, there was language added to provide the applicant some comfort level that any review of the plans that come in through building would be consistent with the conceptual drawings that's been provided before you. This is to provide the applicant some comfort level that planning staff wouldn't make or require drastic changes beyond what's been approved or what would be approved today. On the following page, on page 4, the landscape conditions been modified with the removal of conditions B and C. This is something that we've been having internal conversations on, and in discussions with our applicants and the development community, we feel that this may be redundant in the sense that we are requiring landscape maintenance plans from the applicant, and we expect that should be sufficient for landscaping to take in a manner that would ensure growth, and also there's also some administrative concerns about how we would be able to implement the long-term maintenance of landscaping, and whether that's more of a compliance issue than a planning approval issue. But we're still having some conversations about this internally, and when the water efficient landscape ordinance go before the commission at a later date, this will be further discussed. And the last modification that we have here is on page 11, number 51. And again, this speaks to the fact, this refers to the landscaping that's been recently installed and that we would not require the removal of the landscaping that's been installed. And this concludes staff's report. Welcome any questions you may have.
Are there any questions of staff by the commissioners? Yes, sir.
I'm not exactly sure where the easement is.
The 20-foot no-build easement is along the southern boundary of, pretty much along the flood control channel.
Okay.
So it's in a sense,
Can you point to that with the...
So it goes the whole length
it
of
goes
the
the
yellow
whole
line?
length.
it's I believe it's south of the building areas.
Okay. And is it on their property or the airport property? Are they giving the easement to the airport, or are the airport giving it to them?
It's actually on the airport property.
Okay, so it's the airport that's doing the easement, saying that they won't build there.
Well, and the applicant is in the audience, and he may be able to provide additional clarification.
Thank you.
I can speak to that, Commissioner Seaver.
How does that work? Yes, thank you.
The property was in the possession of the, it's owned by the airport district. The flood control had a no-build easement, or they had a grant for flood control purposes along that area, and the airport had imposed a no-build condition, but the airport itself was not prohibited from building on that site. So basically, out of abundance of caution, even though they're not going to, the building official wanted, for his sake, to have the airport district agree not to build in that area too, to ensure that there would be the right fire separation.
So the easement is actually, the grantor is the airport? The grantee is the applicant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Chair, Director, may I also just ask Director Ng, this is a minor matter, I suppose, but is there any reason why on page 4 of the revised plan development permit, the number 16 was crossed out under light standards? And and utilities is in, it looks like it's included in that paragraph. Was it the intent to make one numbered 15 paragraph for all three of those, or is that just a numbering issue?
That may have been a numbering error.
Okay, so can we just assume that that will be renumbered appropriately?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do that.
So we would bring that up as when we have the motion.
Correct,
Make sure
thank you.
That's okay. Further questions? I have one. It's about number 13. I'm not necessarily comfortable getting rid of both of those. It seems to me one or the other. Either you have the tree trimmers coming in and talking to you guys and saying this is what we're planning on doing and everything is okay, or they don't come in and talk to you, and then if there's a screw up and they chop down trees or when that those trees will get replaced. It seems to me that as it stands right now, you don't have anybody seeing what's going on, and if there is an accident, you don't have any way of fixing it unless that's coming up in a different manner.
You know, as part of the development process, with applicants, developers, they submit landscape plans, and upon construction, they put in the landscaping. We'll go out, do an inspection, make sure that the landscaping is put in, and also we're requiring that a maintenance plan be provided. But beyond that, sometimes it's difficult to continue to monitor the health of these trees unless it's either on a complaint basis. It's administratively, I'm not sure it's been thought through how this would be achieved, and so without the administrative mechanisms in place, we felt that it may be premature to have that language.
Wouldn't it be a better way of doing it than until we alter the mechanisms that we maintain things as they have been, so at the very least we have some ability to come back in case something happens to trees, because as it stands right now, you have no way of going back, and you have no mechanism in place to substitute it. So I would rather have that safety net that then down the road, we alter in some way if we get around to doing the mechanism, rather than eliminating the safety net and not having the mechanism.
That's a fair comment.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? No? Why don't we hear from the applicant then, if the applicant wishes to? Sir, if you could state your name and address.
Good evening, Planning Commissioner. It's Nick Tompkins, NKT Commercial, San Luis Obispo, 684 Higuera, San Luis Obispo. We're really pleased that we were able to get here with a lot of help from city and staff, and also trying to kind of help facilitate the relocations of a couple of tenants. There's also a third tenant out there, DCCA, which is an engineering group that works kind of on upgrades. They're currently working on upgrades of software for the military out at the base, and actually, I think from Monterey to the Mexican border. So they've got a fairly significant project going down there, and lots of good jobs. Almost all of who have been recently relocated to the city. I will say, as it relates to the comments on the tree maintenance and the ongoing stuff there, one of the concerns that we've got in this is, leaving aside the city's issue, how are you going to manage that on a very grand scale, is that, you know, we are putting in and doing the larger tree plantings. We are doing all this stuff initially. It is obviously our intent to try to maintain a place that, you know, maintains value and has a great appearance from the street, and is good for the tenants and nice for the people that come by. But one of my concerns, and on the Enos property, it was not an issue at all because it's a highly trafficked area. We're going to have people there all the time. In this case, my concern is that we are going to quickly potentially fall awry, and which is maybe the very concern that you have. Is it because of a failure to notice rather than a failure to do it properly? And it seemed, from our perspective, inordinately cumbersome and long-term extraordinarily difficult in the city to be able to manage in any kind of a grand scale. So it was our reason to try to take that out of the deal. It was not to avoid any responsibilities or not to maintain the place in a first-class manner. So, but other than that, I think we really appreciate your consideration. Have any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for the applicant? No?
I said,
Ms. White O'Neill?
just for my own curiosity, when you came to our study session a while back, I remember there was some urgency to this project, and I don't recall, it needed to be done by December.
Yeah, one of the tenants, their current office is being torn down, and that is the Appio group, because they're expanding into this, and then so we have to kind of get mind body scooted across and out of the building, and DCCA as well.
Okay.
And it will be a very compressed and tough schedule.
Right, but you got on this agenda pretty quickly. So
We did, and we appreciate that. Well, and it's through the effort of the city and everybody else that we got here.
Right.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Back to the trees. It's always trees.
It's always true.
13C, any tree top severely pruned or severely thinned out subject to the termination of plan division shall require a large size replacement tree. Didn't say tree, replacement. If that was in here, would that be like a deal breaker for you?
So I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm not sure what language it is that you're reading there.
Any tree topped, severely pruned, or severely thinned out, subject to the determination of the planning division, shall require a large size replacement.
So that would be nice to have that removed. If I'm following, could I swipe that language?
Okay.
So what you were asking is if C came out and leave B in?
Would that be, to me, I've seen this happen in the city where without any regulation at all, people come in and they have actually destroyed the landscaping trees.
Right.
So this one to me is a very relevant paragraph. And I don't think it's that detrimental to your project.
Okay, so what you're actually saying is a reverse of what I was trying to follow the logic in that. So what you're saying is leaving C in and taking B out.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fine. And you're right. People, a lot of times, basically hedge it to get a view shed and wreck the tree in the process.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I would be fine with that.
Thank you.
Further questions? No. And I just want to make the comment that that's exactly what I was going with as well. I'm very happy that you're agreeable to that. And, that just comes back to what you were saying, that it's not your intent to. So if somebody does this by accident, it just means it'll get replaced, and there's something somewhere that says you will. So, so that would be good for us. Anything else?
No, that's
No?
it. Thank you.
All right. Any written communication or public comment? No? All right. Then we will go ahead and bring it back to the commission. And is there any discussions or further questions of staff? No? Okay. We're going to need a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve Plan Development Permit PD 2000.
Excuse me. This one has a mitigated negative declaration that has to be approved first.
Yeah, I was going to,
Okay.
that was not mentioned on the agenda, but it is in the report.
It is on the staff report, so
Yeah.
apologize for that.
So I would like to recommend the approval of the mitigated negative declaration PD 2017-003.
I don't know if that's the number, Jen,
Or is that the permit? Or is it just the negative declaration?
just the negative.
It's just a mitigated negative declaration for this PD permit.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we approve the mitigated negative declaration for item number 5.
Perfect.
We have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I would make a motion that we approve PD permit 2017-003 with item 16 of the revised PD permit included and renumbered accordingly, and with the inclusion of item 13C.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Let's move on to item number 6. Joshi Commercial Plan Development Permit at 116 West Enos Drive.
Ex parte,
Yes.
I did have a conversation with the architect, Tom Martinez, about this particular project.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. This proposed project is located on the south side of Enos Drive, approximately 200 feet from South Broadway. There is a separate parcel that separates this parcel from South Broadway. That parcel on the corner of Enos and Broadway is the location of the El Toro restaurant and is also a school district credit union office. As background, there was a Planning Commission approved plan development permit back in 2009 for this site. However, that site at the time was owned by a prior property owner who did not move forward with that application. So we're back with a new plan development permit for this site. The proposal consists of a 3,250 square foot building intended for retail uses. Along with it, there's the landscape and parking improvements that you see here. The application includes 17 parking spaces, 12 parking spaces would be required if the building were simply retail, but the applicant would like to attract medical offices, and that 17 number would allow medical office in this site. The applicant and staff have worked together on refining the architecture. The architecture that is seen here represents a couple of months of going back and forth with the applicant. The applicant is happy with this design. The other item that staff was focused on was the west elevation. That elevation will face other shops in the Stoll Center Plaza, and the applicant has revised that elevation to, as you can see, provide stepping in the roof, provide some trellis details, and some insets on the wall to make it a little bit more attractive than what had been originally proposed. Again, here's more focus on the landscape plan. Right now, there are 2 existing trees on the site. One of them is a street tree, and the other is an existing magnolia tree, which is very close to Enos. And then the application is proposing a total of 7 additional trees for the site. One of the discussions that staff had with the applicant was providing trees with a larger canopy, which the applicant accepts that. Staff provided some suggestions about the types of trees, but those are no means required. We're just looking for a larger canopy tree in this case. One aspect of the landscape, just as in with the prior application, the conditions for tree replacement if a tree is significantly damaged, and the condition that the applicant or a tree contractor come to the city prior to trimming trees had been struck from this application. So the Planning Commission may want to consider reintroducing one or both of those elements. So the only remaining issue with this project, and we believe that we have it solved to a satisfactory level at this point, is the access. The main access will be off of Enos Drive. So in this location here, main driveway, we anticipate most of the traffic will be coming through here. Another access will be across the eastern property line into that property that faces Broadway. And there's already a reciprocal access agreement for these 2 properties to share the access. The one outstanding point of access would be across the south property line into the Stoll Center Plaza parking lot. The Stoll Center Plaza parking lot is actually privately owned. It's not a public parking lot, although it may have that use. We are trying to discern that still using old maps and so forth. In addition, the applicant has been in discussions with that adjacent property owner. And at the moment, that adjacent property owner seems favorable to, if needed, grant reciprocal access between the 2 sites. If that access can be agreed upon, the applicant, this current applicant, would simply need to record an access agreement before we could issue a building permit. If, for whatever reason, those negotiations break down and this applicant is not able to get that access, we do have a condition in the project case that requires the applicant to redesign the site to not depend on having that access. The applicant is aware. The applicant has been in negotiations, as I say. So we anticipate that this will end with this design as shown. But in case it doesn't, we have a backup plan where the applicant will redesign the site. The possible ramification of that redesign, however, would be the loss of a couple of parking spaces. The site would still work for retail, but the applicant's desire to get medical office might be not possible, or at least not possible for the full building. So with that, staff recommends approval of this project, and I'm open for any questions.
So what is the issue if they aren't able to get access?
Well, we're unable to approve a project that forces, and trespass may be a strong word, but at any point in time, if there is no reciprocal access agreement, currently there's a chain link fence along this boundary. This assumes that that chain link is gone. This other property owner could put up a chain link fence and say, you're not accessing my property. If that were to be the case, then we'd have a situation where there's no turnaround and it just doesn't work from a traffic standpoint. The other aspect I didn't mention but was in the report is this project also places their refuse enclosure at the southern end. The way it's oriented, it requires the trash truck to access the container from this side. So again, we're confident, or we're hoping that the applicant will reach an agreement. But if not, we have a condition that will help us revise the plan.
Does this also cause problems for drainage?
I don't believe it does. I believe the site, with the current and most recent stormwater requirements, sites are required to hold their drainage on the property through landscape swales, which the application has here. There's also another landscape area here. So if this did happen to be the low spot, and I'm sorry, I don't know which end is the low spot, but there would be enough room in the landscaping to retain the water and not have to drain across properties.
Okay.
Further questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Frank, it seems that item 12 on the conditions, A, I think that covers the trees, if I'm not mistaken. You mentioned we might want to add something. That verbiage, it's pretty basic, but it seems to work. Your thoughts on that?
Right, and in a way, this does cover it from a different approach. The properly maintained in a natural form would not allow for topping if they were to maintain that condition. So in a way, it does maintain that. The other aspect of this as well is that, for instance, this application showed 7 trees on the site, including one existing, or in addition to one existing. And if in the future we suddenly recognize, wow, the site has no trees any longer, we can go back to the plan development permit and let them know they're no longer in conformance with their permit. Because not only the conditions, but the site plan, the project description, the use that's described, all of those things become part of the plan development approval. And a deviation from that could include removing trees.
Right, and Frank, if I can interject, I think what you meant by your comment earlier is that we just had an action on a previous item, and it's a matter of consistency with what we just did with the previous item compared to the condition for this item. And so in the previous approval, that was number 13 for the landscape and tree maintenance, where it essentially reads just like this for Joshi, but then we reintroduced, sub-item C. So that's just for your consideration.
So the suggestion is to include the verbiage from the previous 13 into this condition?
That's up to the commission, but we're just calling out the consistency or inconsistency.
Okay. And on another note, I've always heard that you can't design a project that the trash trucks have to back up in. Is that true? And does that create a problem in this situation if the fence doesn't come down?
I'll defer to our engineering staff.
Greetings, Chair and Commissioners. We are actually currently working on developing some new trash truck standards where the new design is more of a fork-in design that they lift over the top so that the gentlemen don't have to open up, roll out the large dumpsters, and then push them back. So we are working on different design options that do allow trash trucks some freedom to back up to get into the trash enclosures and be able to service them with some maneuvering of the truck versus not completely disallowing backing up.
So you don't see any problem if this site doesn't get the access?
If they don't get the access, that is one of the things that will be reviewed with the redesign. If they do not get the access, how that trash will work, how the trash enclosures will
Because
work.
it's stuck in that back corner right now.
Because they could get stuck in that back corner.
Yeah, okay.
So that is why we have that condition that says if we don't get that access, there will be some redesign necessary because of one major point is the trash access.
Thank you.
Further questions of staff? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Frank had a question regarding the parking. The site shows 13 parking spaces with 4 on the other parcel, correct?
Right.
Couldn't they just make up those other 2 if they lost them on the south or is that other side overparked?
The property to the east, there's a reciprocal access, but there's not reciprocal parking. So those 4 parking stalls that are existing right now with half a drive, that actually belongs to the parcel with the restaurant and the credit union, and there's no sharing of the parking stalls. Nor is there a need to. Both sites, as designed, the one existing and the one proposed, can stand on their own in terms of parking. Now, if there's a serious redesign and a number of parking stalls to where the site becomes deficient in the number of stalls it has, we may ask the applicant to pursue trying to get shared parking with that other site. That may be another solution if that does come up.
Thank you.
Further questions? Frank, I have a couple. Going back to the parking issue and the flow of traffic, is there some concern? I shop over there occasionally, and I know that alleyway on the south side, is it the thought that the traffic flow is going to come down from the south side and probably curl back around and go to Enos, or scoot into this strip mall down on the south side and then try to get back onto Broadway, because that's already very, very congested anytime you go in there?
Believe this would be a one-way. There shouldn't be traffic coming northbound, or westbound.
It's one way.
So the traffic is free to move how it will in this situation. We don't think there's going to be enough traffic generated by this particular building or use that you're going to notice much of a difference in terms of the flow of traffic in Stoll Center Plaza or exiting Stoll Center Plaza. So right now, it's open to any movements.
Okay. And just to clarify, so if they do not get the agreement, then in essence they have to cut 2 spaces or more?
Maybe more. It depends on how this is designed. It may be 3 spaces to get the necessary turnaround at the end, and then still outstanding would be where is the refuse container going to be located. So that's why I'm saying if they stay above the 12 parking spaces on the site, they'll still be fine for retail uses. If they go below the 12, that's where we may need to talk to the applicant about securing reciprocal parking or other options.
Right. I know that it doesn't seem like that parking lot to the south is well maintained. It's a pretty rough patch of asphalt to go through. A lot of bumps and potholes and that type of thing. I noticed that in the report you basically said that at the time of the report that you didn't think that they were terribly open to having this agreement. Have you talked to the property owner yourself, or has the applicant conveyed to you?
The applicant has spoken to the property owner, and I think our city attorney may have more information about that.
Chairman Dickerson, members of the commission, I have had communications with the applicant's representative, Tom Martinez, and Mr. McGlinty, who's here. He could probably answer that question. I did see an email today from the attorney for the owners of the property, and they're agreeable to being cooperative with respect to access. The issue at first, there was some confusion, I think. They felt that since there's an easement, or there's actually a dedication on the subdivision map for this parcel for the parking, looks like it was dedicated for public parking, but it wasn't really dedicated to the city. So I don't know. It's an unusual situation, but the parking lot is maintained by the city and it's dedicated to public parking. So, but the access is a different issue. Even if the city is able to decide how the parking works, who gets on where is not part of that.
The parking lot itself is supposed to be maintained by the city?
Yeah.
Man, that is a rough parking lot.
It's a
Somebody
bad
might put
deal
that
for the
on the
city.
list.
It's a very bad deal for the city. It's a very old project. It's not a good thing, but it's what it is right now. So, but the access is a different issue, and I think there was some confusion because the property owners felt that they couldn't. It wasn't that they were reluctant to cooperate; it's that they felt that they couldn't give what was being asked. But once we limited it to the issue of access, I think they finally understood, and they're willing to do that.
Okay. Is this a different applicant than originally had the 2009 project?
That's correct.
Okay,
A different
all right.
architect and different property owner.
Okay, so hopefully this one will move forward then. Okay, that's it for questions from me. Another question?
It just brought something up. Frank,
sir.
when you said if the fence goes down, they have to have a turnaround? Now, if we have the required 25 feet of backup, wouldn't that be sufficient? I mean, they would have to, you're not going to require them to.
Not a circular turnaround, but typically they would have a T at the end of a dead-end parking lot, enough so the last spaces could back out to orient themselves to pull out forward, so they wouldn't be backing out of that parking row. So typically, you would have usually 15 to 20 feet of a T in order to allow backing out and then pulling forward.
Thank you.
Further questions? No? Can we hear from the applicant? Waiting patiently. Name and address, please.
Well, good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Michael McGlinty. I'm with Martinez & Associates at 2624 Airpark Drive. So I can answer, as far as the redesign of the parking lot, it's not as much exiting and access by cars. It's the orientation of the trash enclosure itself. Currently, the trash enclosure faces the south and is 8 feet wide. Should we have to turn that around 90 degrees, the trash enclosure then becomes 16 feet wide, and we end up that's how we end up losing parking spaces. So it's not as much the backup as it is the access for the trash truck and the maneuverability of that vehicle to get the trash out. As to the property owners to the south reluctance to grant such an easement, early on they were under the impression that they merely owned the mineral rights to that property, and that because the city maintained the lot, the city can do whatever they wanted with it as far as the parking surface was concerned. So the removal of the fence, the redesign of the curbs in that area would, in the design that was submitted, allowed for that access back and forth. Since then, we've had discussions with Mr. Cinco and with the applicant as well as the property owners, and they are, like Mr. Phil said, that they are now understanding their responsibilities as far as that parking lot, and they in fact own it. So even though that the city maintains the lot, the parking surface itself. So with that, we really want to move forward with this as designed, as presented. So we are in negotiations with them right now to see about getting that easement in place. They have asked that, obviously, our applicant pay for all of the recordation and any fees that would be associated with it, and he's willing to do that. So, yeah, we want to get this thing moving forward, and he does as well, so.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. Oh, I guess there's one.
Sorry. Do we know what color the building is?
To be honest, it's on the application itself. I think the off-white was what was originally approved back in 2009, and we just stayed with that palette. We modified some colors because of the change in the architecture, but for the most part, it's an off-white or lighter color stucco, whether it be marble or some kind of tile wainscot, and then painted expansion joints.
And the awnings?
And the awnings will be
About the same color?
burgundy, right?
Okay.
There'll be accent colored awnings, yeah.
But like the burgundy, like it's common?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. All right. Any written communications or public comment? No? All right. Then I'd like to close the public portion of that and bring it back to us. Any other comments or questions about this particular project? I guess I have, and Mr. Seifert, you brought it up, the coloring. It seems fairly bland to me, and I think we're kind of moving forward into a era of perhaps a little bit upgraded as far as colors go. I don't know. I mean, it's not that I would look at it as a deal breaker, but it would be nice to see a little more imagination used than taupe and another color of taupe. So maybe a little burgundy. So I don't know if that's something that staff can maybe work with or talk to them about a little bit. But for me, I would rather see something, especially since it is facing Enos, so you're going to get a fair amount of visibility from it. So maybe it's something that you guys can at least look at a little bit. That's the only additional comment I have. Other than that, I am concerned about the access, but you guys have that worked out, and you'll figure that out one way or the other for your benefit or not. So, with that said, we need a motion, and I believe it was discussed to maintain the same wording for continuity as we had from the previous agendized item from 13C. So if we have a motion, then that should be included in there as well. Do we have a motion? Okay.
I move that we approve plat development permit PD 2016-005 with condition that any treetop severely pruned or severely thinned out, subject to the determination of the planning division, shall require large size replacement, and that staff look at colors of the building.
I second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. 7. Terraces at Pacific Crest at the southwest corner of Battles Road and Depot Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The project before you is a reconsideration with the intent to revoke a plan development permit and a permit amendment for the Terraces at Pacific Crest. In January of 2006, the applicants did apply for a plan development permit and an associated subdivision map, condominium map, for a project called the Terraces at Pacific Crest. The Terraces at Pacific Crest was is currently a 100 and 12 townhome development project on 8.4 acres located in the PD R3 Plan Development High Density Residential Zoning District. The project site, again, located at the southwest corner of West Battles Road and South Depot Street. In January of 2007, again, the Planning Commission did approve the Terraces of Pacific Crest, the Plan Development Permit PD 2006-003, and the associated track map. Since that time, since the January 2007 approval, the applicant has not pursued development of the project. The applicant has requested and has been approved a series of time extensions from that period of time up until 2006. So the last time extension carried until 2006. As well, the subdivision, based on state law, the track map continued until January 2007. And forgive me, I think in the staff report I said the PD permit expired 2015, it's 2016, I apologize. 2016, that the PD permit expired, not 2015, and the subdivision expired in January 2017. Get that right. So anyway, both have expired, and therefore staff is since the PD permit and the track map have expired, staff is recommending, and the applicant is no longer pursuing the project as well. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission revoke the plan development permit and the track map. And again, for record-keeping purposes, that would remove these, and the applicant would be free at any time to pursue a new plan development permit and or track map. So with that, staff is recommending the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to revoke PD 2006-003 that expired in 2016.
Did you say 2015? No, I guess.
I said a lot of things, but it's 2016.
Is there any questions of staff?
I do have a question.
Yes,
Chair.
sir.
27. I see you wrote, Mr. Tucker, a letter on the 24th of April.
Yes.
Did you get any correspondence back?
Nothing whatsoever. Now, we also CC'd their representative, Mr. Brian Schwartz of Urban Planning Concepts, and it's my understanding from Mr. Schwartz that they were in contact and the applicant just decided not to pursue it any further. And I think the big item, it's pretty easy to extend, well, both of them, if they wanted to, the plan development permit with another amendment, but they didn't pursue the map. And once the map expires, it's all pretty moot anyway. So, yes, we were in contact.
Yeah, I just didn't know if he hadn't gotten back with you. It sounds like his representative has.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further questions? No? All right. Is the applicant here or a representative? No? Okay. Then let us close that and bring it back to us. Is there any questions or comments? If not, we need a resolution, and the resolution will be number 2731.
I move that by resolution, we revoke PD permit PD 2066-003 and permit amendment A 2015-009.
Commissioner Dickerson and members, Commissioner
Yes, sir.
O'Neill, that's a typographical error. It should be PD 2006, not 2066.
Okay.
Sorry, the staff report is correct, and the agenda has got the wrong information. Apologize for that.
Our numbers all.
I kind of like the thought of eliminating things from the future by 50 years. I like that.
Yeah.
That's planning.
Yeah.
That's planning. That's what it's all
Serious
about,
planning.
baby.
It was a
That's
loophole.
You need to make that motion again.
Just acknowledge the correction.
Yes, I acknowledge the correction.
Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
All right. We need a roll call.
Commissioner White O'Neill,
Aye.
Commissioner Seifert,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Dickerson.
Aye. Resolution carries. There we go. All right, other business. 8 oral reports from the Planning Commission and staff.
Chairman Dickerson and members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to take this time to introduce a new member of our planning staff. She's in the audience. Her name is Lauren Marseglia. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she is from Austin, Texas, but she actually grew up in the Southern California area, Torrance, I believe. She's our new Planner 1, and I believe she's excited to join the team.
More importantly, she attended the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Go Blue.
So just from a political standpoint, you are excited to be here, aren't you? Yeah, we all thought so. Well, it's very nice meeting you, and congratulations for the new position. Thank you. You're welcome.
Congratulations.
And as a matter of information for the next public hearing, it is on June 21st, and the only agenda item we have so far is the public art master plan.
Oh. Okay.
That concludes staff's report.
Yep, go ahead.
In reviewing the Joshi project, it's just reminded me that the El Toro Market, who's been in business now for a couple of years, still has what I would have thought were temporary signs. Has there been a change in what we consider a sign, or are we just kind of just taking our time on that one?
That's something that I can look into a little bit more, yes. We'll look into that.
They're nice signs, but they're obviously they're banned.
Right,
They're not.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir?
I have one real quick question on the same project. Looking at the parking tabulation, it said 17.48 spaces, and they said 17. I want some general direction, just see, do we round down?
Yeah, we do. And that would be only dealing with parking required. If we do a calculation based on the floor area and the factor for whatever use, if it ends up being less than 0.5, we can round down. If it's more than 0.5, we generally round up. So if it was 17.6, we would say 18 stalls are required.
See, they were at 17.48, I would have thought 17.5 or 18.
But now again, that's only to allow medical office. And again, retail would fit well within that. So.
Further items? No? I have a couple of questions, or a couple of things. The first is I'd like to put on a study session. Agenda 5, there was a discussion about the HCM with Highway Capacity Manual methodology versus the Intersection Capacity Utilization, ICU methodology. And I know it sounded so interesting. I would like a minor explanation of that, the difference between the two methodologies and why we use one versus another, perhaps at an upcoming study session.
I would be happy to discuss that in an upcoming study session.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And then the other thing is not so much a study session item, it's just who would we talk to then about the parking lot that we just discussed for the Joshi thing? Because now that I know that is our responsibility, it sucks. But that's a technical term, and there you go. So, how does that percolate? How do you guys determine, what gets fixed and what doesn't, and it percolate up? Hallie, you're the traffic.
I'll be happy to answer that question.
Yes, sir.
Community development and engineering does not know, although streets and facilities might. It would be the Public Works Department, streets and facilities.
Okay. So it might be also in there. They may not even realize that they're responsible for it because
it's a very unusual situation with that parking lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe somebody can drop a line or something.
There's a lot of great businesses, though.
There are, and that's why.
Yes.
It behooves them to have a decent parking lot that.
Yeah.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah. I just went to Cars Boots today, drove through the parking lot.
That's typically what I do, I go to Cars.
I can pass on the concerns about the quality of the parking lot to our streets and facility staff.
Well, and bringing it up, because I do shop in that shopping center, and Hallie, you're probably the person to talk about it. I know with this new project, it's only 17 spaces or whatever, it's not going to make a huge difference. But that one way that goes around Carr's Boot Shop is crazy. I mean,
It's a
is that
throw.
gonna be
It's a.
revisited when this project starts to break ground, or?
That is a throwback to the.
No, I mean, it makes no sense now.
And it fronts Caltrans. So Broadway is actually a Caltrans facility. So for us to be able to review that, do any changes to right-of-way, anything like that, actually is a Caltrans matter. And so it's one of those things where I think that's probably why we're just kind of a moot point, is to try and correct any of that would open up a huge can of worms, and we may not get to keep the frontage or the businesses in the same locations as we have them, because we'd have to bring everything up to the new standard requirements.
That's unfortunate, but you're right. That Broadway facing, it's always busy. Those cars are always trying to pull out of parking spaces. Everything gets clogged, and I can only imagine that even with as few additional spaces as we're talking about, any additional traffic flow, one, you can't get onto Broadway immediately. You have to travel the full length of that thing,
And if anything, I see this access that is being proposed, it's one of those things where if we need to take a look at it and kind of re-examine the shopping center as a whole, that's something we would need to do with the private property owner to look at the overall flow of the center, because major parking lot redesign needs to go through new ADA compliance, all that kind of new updates. So anytime we do anything significant in a parking lot, it means bringing it all up to current standards. So it's one of those things where if we really feel like that's a direction we need to head, it would be a fairly major undertaking as opposed to just maintaining the existing surface and facilities. So it may become that time we'll have to take a look at where the pavement is with it, but along with a concept of a redesign, it is a large snowball where you think you just fix one little thing and it proceeds to build and build and build upon itself. So I can check with our facilities team and figure out what they know about what they need to maintain and what the plans are for that shopping center.
I don't want to create an unintended consequence where we're kind of a little worried about a few extra cars, and all of a sudden we cost somebody, $2.5 million,
Exactly. So I'll check in and I'll see if we have any plans coming up for upcoming maintenance, or if they have a concept of where they are with the scheduled maintenance for that.
If we own it.
Well, and just from a kind of a risk management standpoint, I just sort of see the part I'm talking about is where you wrap around cars, boot shops. If we're considering that an access,
Once again,
get back out,
just
that's just going to create the less people that do that, the better.
As Phil says, this is an interesting one because we just maintain the parking lot. We don't own it. We don't own the land. We don't have the rights to change necessarily access or how people flow without working with the property owner. So it's a weird one that we don't own it, but we maintain it. Yeah, so it's kind of one that we're going to have to do some homework on.
What we could do is, and I don't know how much it would really mitigate it, but, we could just ask the property owner to put up a sign that says, right turn only. Now, people will do what they're going to do, but maybe those people will push themselves to the right.
Honestly, after you go through that intersection, that shopping center a couple of times, I take a completely different route. I got caught up in that thing and I'm like, oh, this is not fun. I'm going that way. Or I'm going that way. So it only takes people a couple of times before they get really turned around to not be able to make up their own minds. So yeah, we'll definitely take a peek into it and let you guys know. What the status is.
On a good note, that used to be worse. You used to be able to access that from El Toro Market. And so you were having multiple traffic. You were having people coming from the back.
Off of Broadway.
You were having people turning off Broadway. At El Toro, you were having people turn in the regular cars, boots, and that thing was a mess. And somehow they got the Caltrans to approve shutting it off.
Well, that must have been an active experiment in natural selection, huh?
So it has been worse.
All right, anything else? Well, in that case, let's adjourn. Thank you very much.